Okay, good morning and welcome to Iyun HaMishna. Today I want to just analyze Mishnah Zion over here in Perek Yud of Terumos. The Mishnah basically says the halacha is if you pickle olives together, olives of Truma, some are Truma, right? That can only be in by a Kohen, and olives of Chulin, right? Or like the Israel has olives, they pickle them together. So the halacha depends. If there's any petza, there's any mark, it's been, I think it just means it's been poked in a little. So, and there's any way for the liquid to get into the interior of the olive of chulin, if it's cut in half, if there's a hole in it, if it's been poked, I would say, then it's Nisanas Taam, right? The halacha is kavush kamavushal. Whereas in chulin, at pickling something, it's like cooking it. Some say it's d'oraisa, some say it's d'rabbanan. Most assume it's d'rabbanan. It doesn't really mean it's d'rabbanan. Usually the shears has to be pickled for 24 hours. And I assume that's what we're talking about over here, pickling something for 24 hours, where it's kavush k'mavushal. Let's say it's the rabbanon, the pickling. So, if the chulin olives are cut up in any way, even if there's not actually any truma, even if the olives of truma are shleimim, they're not cut up, and even if the olives of truma are not even there, there's just liquid remaining from olives that you pickled in water. And you put the chulin ones that are cut up, then it asers them because there's Nisanas Taam. Nisanas Taam would aser. Aval shleimi chulin psulei truma mutter. However, if the olives that are chulin are whole, even if you have actual olives of truma that are cut up, and obviously there's taste coming out of them, it does not enter into the olives of chulin. So what's the difference? The difference is, we learn an important fact over here about Nisanas Taam, that it's much easier to give off Taam, right? Even if the olives are complete olives, or shleimim, they give Nisanas Taam when you pickle them with chulin. So therefore, if the olives which are chulin are not shleimim, they're not complete, they're not whole, it'll get into them because even a whole olive gives off Taam. However, if the olive is complete, it will not take in the Taam. It will not take in. It won't accept the Taam from the other olives. You could say this is a din in Metzius, right? That's just the way it is, right? That really, factually, it is that if you're a whole olive, you're not going to get Taam from another olive. You'll release Taam into the water, but you won't get Taam. You can say it's a din in Metzius. I'd like to say it's a little more than Metzius. And I'd like to suggest even if it's whole, it does get a little bit of Taam over there. But like we mentioned over here by Nisanas Taam, that we mentioned yesterday that the idea of Nisanas Taam asering, was it yesterday or was it the day before? The day before we talked about Nisanas Taam. The first four Mishnayos about Nisanas Taam, or the first two Mishnayos. Nisanas Taam asers by truma, so it has to have a mamashos. It has to have something. Like reicha lav milsa, a smell does not make milsa. Taam does aser because Taam has part of the thing in it. So therefore, if it's chulin, right, the chulin olives are cut up. So therefore, and you have Taam of the truma coming out, even if they're whole olives, it will get into the interior of the chulin, and it will be mamashos. It'll be, you see, as Taam we mentioned by truma, it has to be part of the gufa thing because that's really where it asers. It has to aser the whole thing, including the shalo of the Kohen. However, even though it gets into a whole olive, right, a whole olive of chulin, some of the truma, the taste of the truma, it's like reicha, right? There's two types of Nisanas Taam. There's a Nisanas Taam which is actually in the interior of the olive, and there's a Nisanas Taam which is on the exterior of the olive, right? It tastes like truma, but only the exterior tastes like truma, and that the exterior is not part of the goof. It's not part of the kishka. It's not part of the goof. Truma, that's not part of the shalo. What's on the exterior, right? Color, let's say, when you're soveya something, right? Color something on the outside. That's not exactly. It's part of the value of something, like the Gemara in Baba Kama talks about. Be soveya, you're responsible for paying the value of something, but the goof of something, soveya, you have ain but spia mamish. Ain but spia mamish. The Gemara says, Baba Kama daf kuf or kaf aleph. There's no mamash in spia. The exterior is not mamash. It's a part of the goof of truma, and therefore that Nisanas Taam would not aser by truma. I hope you enjoyed today's share. See you tomorrow.